What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream. I know I was behind on last week's. I apologize about that, but in today's video, I'm trying to get that fixed. Anyways, in today's video, because last week was supposed to be top 5 linebackers in mock draft 2, but I assumed it was a little too early to drop that right after mock draft 1, and the combine was coming up anyway, so I went ahead and hold off on that, and that's why it's dropping today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and look at this mock draft 2.0. So this mock draft is going to be a tad bit different than the first one. I will incorporate trades with this one, and it's only the first round. I will do team mock drafts when we will go through all 7 rounds. Starting off with Tennessee, a lot of rumors at the combine the past couple days have really spiraled around with Tennessee going to trade away their first overall pick. Me personally, I think they're in the best position to do so. They really need everything on roster. They could go ahead and take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I personally think Shedeur is the best quarterback, but with the rumors that are going around, they're saying his draft stock is falling. I don't really agree with how they're evaluating that situation. Like, reports have came out and said if Shedeur's last name was Williams, he would be considered a top 3 pick, but because it's Sanders, he's falling out of the top 3. Some say he's even fell out of the top 5. Some don't even believe he's going to be a top 10 pick. And that's crazy. I mean, just think about it. You're judging somebody based off their last name. You're not even looking at what they do on film. You're not even looking about how well of a leader he is, how he carries himself in the locker room. I mean, Shedeur is everything that you would want from a quarterback, a leader. He's a team guy. He plays well. And then when you start looking at his metrics, okay, he moves around in the pocket better than anybody I've watched out of the last 2 or 3 draft classes. I think the only guy that's comparable to him on how they moved around the pocket will probably be Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. Outside of that, I don't think anybody else really has pocket presence like Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur has all the metrics to be a good quarterback. Teams are going to mess up and allow him to drop. Anyways, before I deep dive into the rabbit hole of that conversation, the first trade, and this is the one I've been pondering about on who's really going to trade for the number 1 pick. Now, I can't really do a 3 first or anything like that, so I'm just going to do this, swap 2 first rounds, and I see Cam Ward being the first overall. With the Jets being a quarterback needy team, there's only really 2 quarterbacks everyone has inconsistent as their top 2. Now that Jackson Dart has climbed himself up the board, he's catapulted Sanders. Now, do people believe he's worthy of a top 5 pick? I haven't quite seen that. I didn't get to see his combine or see if he really worked out at the combine yesterday. Elimination Chamber. Had to watch that instead. Plus, we had some basketball going on between Alabama and Tennessee, Auburn and Kentucky, so couldn't watch the combine as much as I wanted to yesterday like the previous 2 days. I think when it comes to Cleveland, Hunter's pretty much their guy. There's a couple teams throughout the first mock draft and this one and even my 3rd mock draft that I do. I believe that there's a couple teams where their picks will never change. And I might be completely wrong on that, but there's a couple teams where I believe the picks will never change. Now, like I said, with Jackson moving up a lot of boards, New York being a quarterback needing team, I feel like Jackson Dart, that's his destination. Now, for the Patriots, there's two routes that I've seen that I've personally gone with, and I've seen other people go with Will Campbell and Abdul Carter. Because if Abdul Carter falls, I don't see him falling outside of the top 4. Will Campbell is also there, and the Patriots really need him, so I also see that being a great pick. So I'm kind of split in between the two. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Carter. He's the best on the board. I feel like defensive help is really needed over there, especially with the release that we've seen that they've done defensively. I think Abdul Carter would be a great defensive piece to start building around. But because Abdul Carter because Abdul Carter was taken, Will Campbell's be taken. I think the Jaguars will be playing off of two directions. They're either going to get the best tackle available to improve that offensive line, or they're going to go out and get the best corner available, being Will Johnson. That's kind of the route I see them going. And it's really going to be the Patriots that determine that route. It's either the Patriots about to take who they want at tackle, or they're not. So the Patriots really are a big deciding factor on how I select for the Jaguars. Shedeur Sanders being available, you're pairing him up with his mentor. I think this is probably the worst possibility that any NFL team can allow. Shedeur Sanders going to the Raiders. And everyone's like, well, that, and a lot of people might be like, well, that's a bad organization. You look at what they did last year, yada, yada, yada. They might not have a lot of pieces. People are going to talk about their poor receiving core. Look, they got Brock Bowers, they got Michael Myers. First of all, you got a tie-in duo right there that's probably better than half the receivers in the NFL, right? You have Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Pete Carroll, a Super Bowl winning, college winning head coach. You pair those two guys together and you go out and you get yourself a young, proven guy like Shedeur Sanders, and he's already he's already learned a little bit from Brady. You pair that up, and you're going to create a monster. That's probably going to be one of the scariest quarterback rooms. That's going to be one of the scariest things to see when it finally manifests on the field. And if people allow Shedeur to fall, I think they're just asking for failure. You're going to look at a new team coming out of the AFC. Now Tennessee, there's a couple different routes they can go. Quarterback being the biggest that they need, but they also need offensive line tremendously. Now they do need a receiver. But I'm not wasting a top 10 pick on McLaurin or McMillan. Malachi Williams, he's too injury prone for me to really justify him being a top 10 pick. So if it really came down to it, we're going to go 2 tackles. Will Johnson will be the next guy taken. James Pierce. James Pierce is the second best edge personally to me. I mean, personally, he is the best. Now, the 49ers, I've had the 49ers go on a couple different routes while going through their team mock drafts and while I'm looking at my second mock draft, especially in the first one when I was trying to determine that one. There's a couple different routes that this team can go, right? Obviously, corner is something that they truly need. I'll say the best 2 corners are off the board. My number 3 corner, I don't really have him as a top 15 guy. He's more of a top 20 guy, personally. So the 49ers are in a situation where they could trade back. But I don't see really anybody wanting to trade up, because I don't see a needy receiver team, right? everyone pretty much has their guys. I don't see Denver trading up for a receiver, because what's the point of trading up when you know Burton's going to fall, Golden's going to fall. You still have Tyler Warren and Mason Taylor at the tight end options. You need a tight end for Denver. So I don't see really anybody trading up. And that being the case, you got to kind of take the best available. And this is really hard for me because I've been tossing it up on who they truly should take. And it's a real toss-up for me. But I see them taking some kind of offensive lineman to kind of go ahead and prepare for a Trent Williams retire. This one will never change. Ashton Jeanty is going at 12. Malachi Starks is going to at number 13. Tyler Warren. I mean, those three are pretty much inconsistent. Are the most consistent: Ashton Jeanty, Malachi Starks, Tyler Warren. Boom, boom, boom. In that order. When it comes to the Falcons, I feel like edge rushers is a huge need over anything they can get in the secondary. With a possible trade for some second and third round picks with Grady Jarrett or Adamai, I probably said his name wrong, I believe Mason Graham will be the most logical choice. Malachi Williams will be taken off the board next. Now, this is a team that needs a lot of defensive help. I personally like starting in the trenches and then moving to my secondary. So that being the case, Walter Nolan is the second best DT for me personally. So he'd be the next guy taken off the board. The Seahawks is another team that I've been really trying to wrap my head around on who they should take. And I've really been leaning on some offensive linemen. Now, Jalen Walker, I see him going to Tampa. Now, Tampa, I've actually seen, and see, when I release my top 5, it's not going to make a lot of sense about Jalen Walker. Right? But for right now, I'll leave him at 19, and I'll kind of explain his situation when I talk about my top 5. Maxwell is my third best corner in this year's draft. His combine kind of really showcased what he could do, and then I watched this film and I really loved his ability. I think the injuries really hurt him, and he could have been in conversation as 1 or 2 on the board if it wasn't for his injuries. That's my opinion, right? The Chargers are in a sticky situation, right? They're going to lose Joey, right? They may not. So with the possibility of not having any edge rushers, you are going to want to get edge rushers. But at the same time, you still don't have a receiving core. You don't really have no tight ends. You really don't have any receivers outside of Ladd McConkey. So grabbing a receiver will probably be the best thing for you to do. Now for Green Bay, they're going to go back to the A&M kind of well that they got last year and go ahead and get Stewart. Now, when it came to the Vikings, I kind of have them going defense through and through. I don't see them going offense anyway. And it's basically best defensive player available, edge or tackle. And I think Derek Harmon is going to be the best available at this point. Because personally, he's my number 3 defensive tackle in general. In terms of overall defensive linemen, I mean, you got to dig deep just for him to get up on the board, because Stewart's there. You're going to have Jalen Walker, who's a mystery piece for me personally. I don't really see him playing the role of linebacker. So for teams that are wanting to generate extra pass rush, you're going to be looking for guys like Jalen Walker. You're going to be looking for guys like Stewart. You're going to be looking for guys like James Pierce, Mason Graham, and then Derek Harmon. So I don't think he's a bad choice. I think he's probably extremely well balanced. I liked his combine. I really liked his combine. I think his combine probably impressed me the most out of everybody on my list. When it comes to like my top defensive tackles or my top D linemen is what I'm going to do, which will be everybody out of the linebacking group that I don't really consider to be a linebacker, and then it kind of merges in with your defensive ends. So it's a mesh group. I'll have to really break it down more when I do my edges and my defensive line. Receivers a real possibility here. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs. Going defensive lineman is also another possibility here, because I really like Mike Green. I feel like with Mike Green, you could do a whole lot with him. He's only a redshirt sophomore, so the amount of play time he's gotten is extremely low. So the capabilities that you can do with Green is there. But Grant is a true nose. I mean, he's through and through, I think, the most true nose tackle you will find in this year's draft. I mean, straight, nothing, no questions about it personally for me. So if I'm the Texans, do you take somebody who has a lot of upside, or do you take somebody that's a little bit more proven? I'm going to go ahead and go with the route that you go ahead and take the guy a little bit more proven in Grant. Now this is where you go ahead and get your best linebacker off the board with Campbell. I mean, the Ravens, I got them going receiver, whoever's the best off the board. I think Matthew Golden really showcased a lot of great things at the combine, and I think his speed really helped push him way up the boards. Now, this is the team that really needs a lot of help. You need some edge rushers. You need some defensive tackles. Said you need some corners. You know what I'm saying? So your best edge rushers are already off the board outside of Jack Sawyer, or Mike Green will probably be your best two defensive ends left, or defensive tackles left. So Mike Green's going there. Now, the Washington Commanders, they already got Deebo Samuel. They could go receiver again, or they can go ahead and stack up with a tight end. I think Colston Loveland being your third best tight end, he's going to be your best receiving option in terms of a tight end. And that's where I see him going. I think this year's class is really heavy in the offensive tackles. Yeah, Shador, Banks, Johnson, Pierce, Tyler Brook. I'm really bad with pronouncing his names. All right, Bowman, Mimboa, tackle out of Missouri, Ashton Genty, Malachi Starks, Tyler Warren, and Mason Graham rounds out your top 15. Now, I know there's some picks on here that are probably questionable, like this pick at number 21, Maxwell Hairston. I don't think a lot of people see him jumping into the first round. I think since his combine, he's definitely jumped into the second round. And it's going to be really on how he does at his pro day that really catapults him into the first round. I think he's a first round guy. I think what I've seen on film that he showcased, what he did his pro day, or his combine, not his pro day, but his combine, I think his pro day will really give him the ability to be a first round, late first round. It might not be top 20. We might see some different moves. We might see some trades up until the actual draft day. So as of right now, he's going to be a number 21 pick for me. He's my third best corner. I think you're going to see a lot of edges. You're going to see a lot of linebackers that I don't think a lot of people have on their boards as a top pick yet. I know I didn't put Jeffrey Bassa inside of the first round. He's somebody that we'll talk about in my linebacking list. But he has the possibility, I believe, to be a first-round talent. I know Carson and Campbell definitely are first-round graded linebackers. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and do our first 2 team mock drafts. So we're going to do a full 7 round. Alright, and it makes a lot of sense. Go ahead and look at the trade-off. So we have New York wanting to trade up. We do a little bit different. We go ahead and accept the Jets. So they went Shador first. That's pretty interesting. I don't think I'm going to change up too much from Hunter. Okay, so basically their top, well, except for T-Mac over there. So now I think a double trade back is very liable with the fact that this is a very defensive heavy class, and I don't see too many teams really needing top tier tackles. I mean, there's going to be some teams that really need a tackle, but in terms of, you know, how far apart your tackles are, there's not really a huge gap with your guys. You already went corner. Offensive lineman is probably the next thing you need to go ahead and grab. But you don't have an edge rusher anymore. So I will go ahead and go edge. Tennessee. They really need a quarterback. I don't see missing out on a quarterback. See, now that they were able to trade back, they were able to grab a lot of help in the second round. Probably should have done it fast. This is a team that did not have a run game. So Scatterboot going in the third round at 92, I think is a very reliable option for Tennessee, especially with a team that didn't really have much of a run game last year. And once you start breaking into the second and third round are really the go ahead, in my opinion, to find those developmental guys. Second round, has a high possibility of starting. First round, definitely, I feel like is day one starter. Third round is kind of in that mixture. They could have the ability to become a day one starter. Then again, they can probably be just a developmental guy. But Scatterboo, I really think could be a day one starter in the right system. And what are the system to go to but a needy running back system? You're not going to get a whole lot of touches, but that's fine because over time he will kind of develop into your pure third down back. Kind of like the poise of Will Howard. I think that would be a really good pick. I think that will bring a lot of fan bases into Cleveland. Definitely do it all. Let's go ahead and keep fixing that offensive lineman. Offensive lineman was a very, very terrible spot for the Tennessee Titans last year. So always improving that offensive line would definitely be a must. Tennessee Titans was so bad last year, I feel like they really just need to go ahead and get the best players across the board to fill their team with. The amount of fourth round and fifth round picks this team has is crazy. I did not realize. Travis Hunter, tight end. I mean, the amount of picks they're going to have in this year's draft, especially if they do that trade back, some of these picks might end up being sent the next year, is what's going to happen. So I went corner, edge, tight end, quarterback, linebacker, DT. They could go running back again, especially with a guy like Preston Smith. If Preston Smith, not Preston, Bashard Smith is I think any team that's looking to get a gadget guy, a receiver, running back kind of type of guy, you need to go ahead and get Smith if he's available. I think he would probably be one of the best offensive weapons to get in this year's draft class. Is it over? Are we done? Oh, we got one more. ETN going to Miami would probably be a really good combo for that. For that right there. Where do we go at this point? I feel like that's where we go. And the last pick of this year's draft. So this is what it's looking like for the Cleveland full team mock draft. We will do a 2.0 version. Once the draft time comes closer, I'll go ahead and just do a mass release of the 2.0s. But this is, I got Travis Hunter, I got Stewart, Mason Taylor, Will Howard, Knight, Phillips from Maryland, Smith from SMU. I think Smith is really, I think that's a huge steal. I didn't think he was that low on a lot of people's board. I thought he was a lot higher. Apparently not. I have Tennessee trading all the way back twice to the 12th pick. Go ahead and get Banks Jr. They got Jackson Dart in the second round, Walter Nolan, Jack Sawyer, Cam Scatterboo. Jeffrey Bassa, I think he's a linebacker that can surely climb into the second round, maybe first round, depending on how his pro day truly goes. Right? But it's time for my top 5 linebackers. So when it comes to my top 5 linebackers, I have Jack Kaiser at number 5. And I really like the pure leader that Kaiser is. Look and take this pick 6 back to the house. I mean, the ability that he has to cover sideline to sideline from the linebacker position and even come off the edge is great. I think that's a really great part of his game. Now, on film, he looks a little smaller. And I thought that was going to be a real big problem. It's kind of why I didn't have him up on my pro day. I didn't really, or have him up high on my list, come towards the combine. But then, after watching his combine, and I went back and took a second look at his film, I think this guy really has capability to be a early fourth round, late third round talent from the linebacking position. I think he's probably one of the best true middle linebackers you could find in this year's draft. And when it comes to finding your traditional guys, I think that's going to be really hard because we're seeing the game evolve. And a lot of your positions are changing, they're evolving, or they're merging with other groups, right? We see receivers and running backs now. If you get a receiver, he might just be a running back, or a running back might just be a receiver, and you play him and you let him run. You run the ball with him as a back, and then he'll go out wide and he'll line up wide as an X or a Y. And they're not just doing it where it's sloppy, and it's really crisp on how they do it. And we see a lot of gadget guys coming in to college, and see a lot of gadget guys going into the NFL. And then when you look at your linebackers, your outside linebackers have really just kind of turned into edge rushers because a lot of teams are running that 4-2-5, or a lot of teams are just running 2 linebackers, being it's a 4-2-5 or they're running a 3-3-5. Your third linebacker, you might have him as an outside. You might end up having 3 middles, but they're not traditional middle linebackers, or they're not your traditional Sam and Will Backer or Sam and Mike. I think you see a lot of involving in the game, but Kaiser, he's a traditional middle linebacker through and through. At number 4, I have Demetrius Knight. I think Demetrius Knight, when you think about abilities, to kind of play both positions. You either want him outside or you want him inside. I think he has the speed and the technique to really be molded into either one of those. So that's why I kind of have him on my 4, because when it comes to Kaiser, I think he's already kind of molded out on where he's going to play on the field. He's a middle linebacker through and through. Knight, on the other hand, yes, he's not as polished as Kaiser, but I think he has a higher ceiling, and he's just as balanced and fluent in his play style without having the full polishedness that Kaiser has. So Knight's definitely my number 4, and I really like this combine. His combine, to me, really showcased that little need for improving on technique, but also showcased the ability that, hey, he is definitely, in my opinion, an early 3rd round guy. Without a doubt, he's definitely an early 3rd. Now, Jeffrey Bassa, this guy right here, I think is, in terms of phenomenal. I don't think there is a better linebacker, I'm talking about polished, in this year's draft. Like, I was just talking about Kaiser and how well he was polished. I think Jeffrey Bassa is definitely head and shoulders on Kaiser. This guy right here, he can guard tight ends. He can guard linebackers. He's an ex-safety, turned into a linebacker. He had a lot of linebacking reps this year, which helped him out, and I think you can really show the safety in him. Now, this play was just being right place, right time, playing right off the edge. His speed, running a 4.64, really surprised me, but his comp for me has always been Fred Warner. Watching his film, I think Fred Warner is definitely a really good comp for him. Now, he came a little in too high on that tackle, but Jeffrey Bassa is probably my favorite guy. Now, he's number 3 because obviously there's 2 other guys I think that have a higher potential. When I look at these guys and I'm judging them, Jack Kaiser, he's probably a 4th round. In a lot of ways, he's similar to Bassa, but I think Bassa has a higher ceiling. Obviously, that's why I have him at 3. Plus, if I could find it, Bassa's dip, when he rushes and when he's playing run defense, the way he dips to evade the offensive lineman is just beautiful. I mean, that is absolutely beautiful. And I wish I could find it for y'all, and if I could, I'll definitely show y'all. But it was during the Wisconsin game, and I wish I could find it. I think it was he probably has some of the best hands in terms of evading the blockers I've ever seen in this linebacking class, and I am truly am impressed. Now, Carson, in my opinion, better off the ball. Now, yes, I was talking about how Bassa plays that sense of a traditional middle linebacker. But when it comes to Bassa, I think his game really excels in defending the run and then being able to come off the ball in terms of pass coverage. Carson does it a tad bit different because you can utilize him in the blitz package. Now, that's where those two kind of differ. They kind of differ. You got one guy I think that's extremely well in terms of being off the ball in the run game and in the pass game. Carson, I think, has just the same ability in the passing game that Bassa does. I don't think he can really cover tight ends, but the element that I like of his game that's a little bit better than Bassa's is his blitz ability. The way in his hands and the technique that he uses when it comes to blitzing the quarterback. And I think in this league, we've really evolved where you have to get to the quarterback. And you see a lot of teams not really being able to generate a lot of pressure to the quarterback. That's why I have Carson over Bassa. If it wasn't for the fact that I think the NFL is leaning towards more pass heavy rushers out of your linebacking position, I wouldn't have Carson over Bassa. It would be Bassa over Carson. But because of the pass rushing ability that you can use from him in the blitzes, Carson has that slight edge because he can cover. I think Bassa and Carson are the best two cover linebackers in this year's draft. And then, like I said with Knight, he probably has the highest ceiling to be able to be molded into either an outside or middle, while Jeffrey and Carson are more, in my opinion, more middle linebackers, while one can blitz better and the other one is a little bit more polished pass coverage backer. Now that's my number 2. Now my number 1 guy, he kind of, in the same sense, I'll probably repeat some things about Knight, but he's a guy you can definitely mold wherever you want on the field. He has the history coming out of high school as an edge rusher. He was he's transitioned to a linebacker in college. His combine, I thought, spoke to not only me, but anyone who watched his combine, really seeing, okay, this guy could be dangerous at the next level. He could definitely be the next great linebacker to come into the NFL. And I think the ability where you can mold him inside, outside, edge rusher, you can really put him wherever you want on the team. I think you need to polish up his pass coverage a little bit in terms of on-the-field work. Now, I know his combine showed that he could really run, and he had the ability to turn his hips like you needed, and he did a good job of keeping his eyes up when he needed to. But it's the film work that probably needs a little improvement. But this guy is athletically crazy. He's probably the most athletic, freakishly athletic linebacker that I've seen in this year's class. So that's why he's my number 1. I think his ceiling is through and through higher than everybody else's. Now, on the same level as Jeffrey Bassa when it comes to being a field general like Kaiser, he's not quite there yet. Being a blitzer, being a good, pass rusher like Carson, I think he's closer to that ability right now, a lot of that being because of his edge rushing history. But there's a lot of things about Campbell that has to be cleaned up, but he doesn't do it so badly where it's like, oh, he's not a first round pick, right? I think he does everything well enough that he's deserving of a second round, but that ceiling and his talent that he has catapults him into a first round. So I had Kaiser at 5. If I can get it to load. So I had Kaiser at 5. Demetrius Knight at 4. Kaiser to me is a mid to early 4th round. Demetrius Knight is a mid 3rd round. I think Jeffrey Bassa is definitely a mid 2nd round, early 2nd round guy for me. And then Carson and Campbell are both 1st round linebackers. I think Campbell's a top 15. Carson's more of a top 25, late 1st round type of guy. But Campbell is definitely, I see him going inside the top 15. Now, I know I did not showcase Jalen Walker, right? And there's a reason for that. So when it comes to Jalen Walker, I think I don't think he's going to play linebacker at the next level. Just go ahead and put that out there. But for me personally, kind of how the same way I look at Travis Hunter. He is an anomaly. He's in his own category. You can't really compare him to anybody else. You can't compare him to other corners. You can't really compare him to other receivers. He's a guy of his own. Hunter is. And that's kind of how I look at Jalen Walker. I can't compare him to other linebackers. I can't really compare him to other edge rushers. He's just a guy of his own category. And that's just because I believe he's going to be turned into an edge rusher. He might play outside linebacker at the next level, but linebacking skills, his coverage skills, I don't really see any of that. His ability to play field general, I don't see any of that from his game. Pass rushing, Yes, he's probably the best pass rushing linebacker coming into this draft. He's probably one of the best pass rushers coming into this draft. Period. But those linebacking skills that are needed to be a linebacker, an outside linebacker, a middle linebacker, I don't really see those components in his game. So that's why I don't have him in my top 5. But I still have him going in the first round, despite him not being in my top 5 categories, kind of anywhere on the board. I mean, when you look at his snap counts, this guy lined up majority on the defensive line, A gap, B gap, outside tackle, inside tackle. I mean, this guy didn't really line up in your linebacking positions. He lined up majority of the time on the defensive line or as a defensive end. So that's why I don't have him in my top 5 linebackers and still have him going in the first round. Now, my honorable mention guys would be like Barrett Carter, Kane out of UCLA. I thought really impressed me at the combine. He is somebody who I do think will be a 5th or 6th round steal. Barrett Carter, a lot of people are saying he's a 2nd and 3rd round guy. I think he's more of a pure pass rushing linebacker. He can Carter's the best example of what Jalen Walker could be, right? I think Jalen Walker has the ability to learn how to cover, to get better at coverage, kind of the same way that Carter, in my opinion, is not that strong in that sense, but he's an excellent pass rusher. He plays the run game exceptionally well, but his weak suit is in the pass game. And that's Walker, for me, don't even have a pass game to really talk about. Is how bad I think it is. Or at least that's how it seemed to me on film. So, with all that out the way, I hope y'all like it. Please talk as much as y'all want to about my my mock drafts. Tell me what y'all think about it. And like always, I'll see y'all in the next one.